I saw David first. We'll go David. Opening, closing. Bobby has a couple songs. We'll do an opening, a class, and then afterwards you'll do opening if you would. Perfect. We'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 20. If you'd like to turn there. And again, thank you for being here. Midweek study. Hopefully got a good one lined up for you. So, all that being said, you ready? All right, let's begin.
I'm telling you so much to 558. 558. We're going to sing the first and second verse for us. Let's sing. My business on the rest in Jesus' blood, righteousness, the cannot cross till sing Jesus' name. Oh, Christ is solid, walk us down the ground is sinking sand, and the ground is sinking sand. When darkness veils his lovely face, hard mercy, amazing grace. When every lion thrown with hell, I will fail. On Christ so solid, I can stand on the ground is sinking sand. Oh, is sinking sand. When he shall come and trouble self, oh, he'll be found. His wife, oh, Christ so solid, I can stand on the ground is sinking sand. Oh, the ground is sinking sand. We're going to sing the 587, 1 and 2 before the open prayer. Let's sing. If the skies are filled with grace, it will be so blue. If your presence perseverance, there's a river like the sun everywhere. With your faith and see my friend, just enough is great. Sing and be happy, kiss to like trust him. Here to hear your soul back home. Be over, just do and play with your voice and favorite song. Sing a hand today. All three feathers hill and bold, off in the sky. When the saints of the word comes by, there's all things reward my word, more the silver and gold. Every hope and trust is there, just a tales of told. Sing happy, happy, crash on to the goal. Trust him who is in live. Give your soul back home. Be grateful to and pray. Lift your voice. sing his song. Can I have today? And the table songs at 870.
I pray with you. Most loving and gracious Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the wonderful day that you blessed us with. Be together as saints and sing songs of praise and thee and study thy word. Heavenly Father, please be with Brother Jake tonight as he prepared a lesson for us. Be with us as students. Other things here to teach us. Father, our lives so that we might become Christians. Heavenly Father, be with the sick of our non-word. Be with those that are caring for them. Be thy will, bring it back to the portion of us. So thankful for the prayers that have been asked in this congregation. Father, keep us all safe and bring us back to the next.
All right, before we begin, I want to thank Andrew for allowing us to have these nice slides. If they're bad, you can blame him. I mentioned to him earlier that early this morning I updated my computer. I was looking to download a particular app on my computer, and since then it wouldn't allow me to open up the apps that I generally use to create these things. So I want to go ahead and thank him as we begin. 2 Samuel chapter 20. We've been looking very carefully at the life of this king. We saw him really before we ever knew much about him as someone who was a shepherd who, when his brothers were out, he went to go care for his brothers. We see that he killed tens of thousands of people in warfare for the sake of his Lord. We see that he rises up in the eyes of the people, but King Saul hated him all of his life, seemingly. Sought to kill him, chased him into caves. And this king, yet to be king, still did everything in his power not to slay the man who was oppressing him. And even to the point where he finally becomes king, at least king over Judah, for 6 years, we see that Ishbosheth is the counterpart until Ishbosheth dies, and now David is king. And all these wonderful victories happen, and he's favored in the eyes of the people, and yet just rebellion after controversy after war just continues to pile on. And it started with his sin. We see that that's really when things shifted. You have the victory that comes, and in the city of David, he has the palace there. Things are going swell. Philistines are destroyed, and the Lord is working amongst his people. And then David stays back, and that sin happens. And ever since chapter 11 of 2 Samuel, we've seen controversy after war, after difficult situation, time and time again, in particular with David's sons. We remember what Nathan had to say about David, ultimately that you shall not die, and ultimately the consequence would be fourfold, as the parable went. We see that the sword would never depart from his house. We'll see that again in this text. And we finally get to the point where Absalom, we've been following this narrative forever, Absalom arises a rebellion against David, pushes him out of his own city. David, as he goes, he's reviled and has stones cast on him by Shimei, and he finally gets to Mahanaim, and you have this guy, he's 80 years old, who's been taking care of him the whole way, we saw last week. And finally, David is able to kill, or win the battle, I should say, against Israel in the forest. And the forest took the lives, is the way the text said. And so Absalom was one of those who died. Joab was ultimately the one who killed him, although you had 10 others who kind of finished the job, which I think mimics the 10 concubines, which again pops up in our text today. So where are we left at in this story? We see David at the beginning, we see him at his sin, and we see all of this controversy with his firstborn son dying after a 6-day illness because of his initial sin that he committed with Bathsheba. We then see Amnon, his firstborn son after the firstborn son, technically secondborn son, that was born to him in Judah in his 6-year reign. What happened to him? Well, he's killed because of Absalom. And now Absalom's killed. So that's 3 children already who died tragically. And David, is he now king now that his son has lost a rebellion? Well, that's what we covered last week. We saw the context of chapter 19 in the beginning and the end. We saw that there was some controversy over, is David our king? Is he not our king? Do we have claim on him, or do we have claim on him? And in the middle, we saw those 3 narratives: Shimei, Mephibosheth, and Barzillai. Shimei, he pops up again in chapter 20. He was the one who casted stones and cursed at David and all of the men as he walked out, paraded out of his own city. Curse be you of God, Absalom. And then he comes in full repentance, bows down before him. He fell down. He called him, my Lord, I'm your servant. I did wrong. I have sinned. I've come today, the first of all people, in his penitence. We saw in the second narrative that Mephibosheth did not desert David, but rather he was lied on. And Mephibosheth looked ugly. He looked dirty. He hadn't showered, trimmed his toenails, literally. And so here he comes back and he says, I've still been loyal to you, David. And we drew out that lesson of loyalty and also sacrifice. You know, the guy who lied on me now has all my stuff, but David allows him to have half of his stuff back. He says, no. Even though he lied, I just care about being in your presence, David. Loyalty and sacrifice to the king. And then lastly, Barzillai, who took care of David when he was at Mahanaim and loved him and cherished him and brought him in. And that passage where it's like, you know, animals, and food and water and tents, you know, all these different things that were provided for him. And this guy Barzillai says, no, you go on ahead. I'll stay back. I'll go back to where I'm from and I'll die there. But you take care of Chimham. You send Chimham along. And at the end of the chapter, we see the controversy between the 10 tribes and Judah. 10 tribes say, we have claim on them. You know, we were talking at the beginning of the chapter, like, we're the first to kind of say, hey, well, what's in our best interest? Maybe we'll take David as king, and you know it'll be fine. He did great back in the day, you know. Of course, our loyalty's in question, but so what? And the people of Judah are like, well, no, we actually just made a pact with David. In fact, now one of our own, the very chief leader of Absalom's cause, is now the chief leader of David's cause. Because that was the conciliatory response at the beginning of the last chapter. And how Judah, so all the people were there to cross David over the river, but only half the Israelites. There was a debacle, a quarrel. Who has claim? And then you have at the beginning of chapter 20 a third party. Oh boy, we have a third party interest. Look at verse 1. Now a worthless fellow, that's one way to describe a person you've never met before, happened to be there, just so happened to be there, and his name was Sheba with a B. He's the son of Bichri, a Benjaminite. And he blew the trumpet, and he said, we have no portion in David, nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, O Israel. So all the men of Israel withdrew from following David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri, and the men of Judah remained steadfast to their king from the Jordan even to Jerusalem. A couple things to mention, and what we're just going to entitle in this first point, the revolt. We have a new guy who comes on the scene, Sheba. It says he happened to be there. Happened to be where? Well, as David is crossing over to enter back into the land, across the Jordan, not to Jerusalem yet. He's a far off ways. There's this guy who says, oh, wait, Israelites, you're claiming, you say you have a claim on the king. And then the people of Judah are like, oh, no. He's flesh and blood, he's our guy. Why are we allied with him at all? Like why is he going to be king in our eyes? So you notice he says, we have no portion in David. We have no allegiance or no ties or no nothing. And so Why? Now, why I emphasize that so strongly is because of verse 2. So all the men of Israel withdrew. Now, wait a minute. They just went through this whole quarrel of like, he's our king, he's our guy. We've already made the decision before you did, Judah. So yeah, he's our king, and who are you to have claims on him? Yeah, we're gonna be right by his side. And now they just switch. They switch. So what is their real interest? I think is the key question. And maybe I'll ask more questions tonight. What do you think their key interest was if it wasn't David? What would it have to be? Okay, maybe a king. Okay, yeah, influence. I think that ties into it. Let's go a little further. What else? If their interest isn't David?
It's selfish.
There you go. There you go. Both of those coupled together. And self-interest. What benefits me the most? What do I get out of this thing? And so you have this guy leading a rebellion, just happens to be there. You got all these people, and he leads all of Israel. Now, notice when it mentions Israel, it's not talking about Judah. It's talking about all the rest of Israel. Remember, we already made the divide, kind of. Now, none of the divided kingdom that comes after Solomon's death with the civil war. But we've marked a divide between, you have Israel and then the people of Judah. All right, so an important distinction. We have no portion in David, nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. And most scholars view that as a sly remark, as a derogatory response, son of a farmer or a shepherd or whatever. I don't know. I can't verify that. But we don't have any inheritance. We haven't put a down payment into this. Like we're still free. I'm not bound up by some kind of contract. Every man to his tent, O Israel. Every man back to where you're at. And so verse 2, all the men of Israel, they withdrew from following, and everybody was right there with them. And they were going to walk him across and bring him in. Like the swift reception. And they withdrew from following him, and they followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. But the men of Judah, they remained steadfast to their king. Now, I think anybody, you don't have to be a preacher, can see a significance with that statement as it relates to us in our spiritual walk, in relation to our God, in being what? Steadfast. Remaining steadfast to our king. When I read this, and we'll move on here eventually, it's I guess a normal sized chapter. What it reminded me of is the division in the church today, like the Christianity we see today. I have a claim on the king. I have a claim on the king. Oh, well, he's our flesh and blood Jews, or Messianic Jews, or people who say, well, I've got, we're the historic, we've been doing it for X amount of years. And then the others who, well, we have a claim on him because we don't have to do this, but we can do this, and it benefits me in some way. I have a claim on him. And then this, I don't have a claim on the king at all. And the reason it made me think of that is just all the denominations split, and he's my God, not your God. He's this and that and the other. And you just see this chaos that has ensued. Chaos ensued ever since David's sin. Chaos that's directly ensued since Absalom's death. We see Amasa is now David's what? Chief commander. Who was once Absalom's. Replaced Joab. We've got a chaos, a chilly mix of controversy going on here. And it reminds me of the king who's just kind of left. He wants the people's favor. God wants his favor. He won't coerce people's favor. And you have all these different people saying, well, we're right, and we got this, and we got this. And actually, I reject you as king. And it's not necessarily, they want a king. They want one as strong and as powerful as David and everything else, but who's not David? We can make a God who will accept homosexuality. We'll make a God who will accept these little small sins, and not be that big of a deal. But we can fashion a king for ourselves, likened and as strong and as powerful as David. And we may personally make our own king to say, oh, he's acceptable to this, and this isn't a big deal. But this we make big deals for our God, and this chaos brings me a little bit of familiarity with the dynamic we see today. What's the answer? Quickly, in Ephesians 4, it talks about being united, spirit, and the bond of peace. We don't have to. If we have time, we'll turn there later. I'll circle that. Sorry, try to remember that if we have time. Verse 3. Then David came to his house at Jerusalem. Now you remember, they crossed him over the Jordan. Who helps them to the city of Jerusalem? Verse 3. Who helps them? Is it Israel? Judah helps them. Israel's left. Judah helps them over. Okay? What's the first thing he does? He gets back. What's that? He goes to his house. That's right. That's exactly right. Hey, that's what I would do too. And there we go. And the king took the 10 women, the concubines whom he had left to keep the house, and he placed them under guard and provided them with sustenance, but did not go into them. So they were shut up until the day of their death, living as widows. We could spend a lot of time here too. I'm going to try not to. David, the first thing he does is he cares for the 10 women who were abused. Remember, Absalom, when he gets into the city, he wants to make a big statement. And he takes the 10 concubines out in the public square in front of everybody and says, I'm now the king, in this declaratory statement of the abuse on these 2 concubines. David comes back. It's likely to me, seemingly the portrait from the scriptures that David did not leave them with ill intent for them to be abused whatsoever, but that he did so for the purpose of caring and tending for the house. David gets back. He obviously knows what took place, and that hurts his heart. But he does make provision so that that'll never happen again under his watch and under his care. He provides for them. The real question is, well, what about these 10 women? Is there a lesson there? And I think there is, but I want to open it up to us. We have 10 women abused, and now David gets back, and David doesn't treat them as like you would a concubine in this day. He doesn't go into them. His son did, so he apparently didn't want to get involved with that. Didn't want to give them to other men either, because that would be a weird thing. Didn't want to just cascade them around with them, because how would that view in the eyes of the people? And he protects them and puts them away. But if you're one of the women and you're there and you're abused, and now you can't be married, you're protected, yes, but what kind of life is this? Why is this even mentioned in the text? Maybe is a better question. What do we got? What do we think? Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, absolutely. The consequences of a bad thing. I think that's a great way to describe it. You have these 10 women who are innocent, who, in the understanding of the Bible, are sinners as anybody, but are innocent in all of this regard. You're exactly right. And undeserved to have this happen to them completely. Um, and again, we read back and we say, oh, this is emotion. We have a different lens. And I think it does evoke naturally an emotion. It shouldn't dominate us or overrule us. You're exactly right. I think there's quite a few lessons here. I know we don't have time to go through. Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure. Hmm. Hmm. My first thought was, if I was one of these women, and I went through what they did. Hard for me to put myself in those shoes. But if I were, is that cause for me to forsake my faith in God? What would our answer be? No. Oh yeah, it might be a temptation, sure. But it wouldn't be a just temptation, or the temptation wouldn't be from a just source. And the follow up would then be, what excuses have we heard in our day and time? People saying, "Oh, I was dealt a bad card, so I'm who is God to me?" We don't know whether these women are faithful or not. It's just a point to be drawn out that the worst atrocity that we could ever face does not give us cause to forsake our God or to make him seem unright or unholy. Secondarily, I think this is most important. David, when he comes back, the first thing he does is to take care of his household, is to make sure that things are in order, and to show that he still has concern over those who are in his care. That is going to set forth the kingship to follow.
They call it concubine, but back then, a concubine to a king was a wife nonetheless. She was his wife.
Right.
She's a lesser wife because she didn't come from high-born blood like princesses.
And you notice he didn't divorce them, and that would have been a legitimate thing that he could have done.
So they were his wife, and I'm sure he felt the way we would feel if something like that fell on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And again, no, you're exactly right. And I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I think the most important thing is David does all that he can in his power based on the consequences of sin, from his own sin and particularly his son's sin. He does the best that he can to create a solid foundation for his stay back in Jerusalem.
And the wife are not being punished. They're
being protected here. Yeah, not a bad thing. Verse 4. Then the king said to Amasa, "Call out the men of Judah for me within 3 days, and present yourselves here." Now, I've noticed we've used a lot of time. I'll try to get through it. I'll do my best to go quickly. David makes it back to his place of residence in Jerusalem. Where's Joab? Well, we don't know where he is. My point is, Amasa has taken his role. Why? Because that was the conciliatory offer in order for Judah to accept David. Remember, the people of Israel were accepting him first, and Judah was very hesitant. And the proposal was offered, and Amasa's brought in. That sets forward the controversy between Amasa and Joab, as we're about to see. Nonetheless, David goes to Amasa, not Joab, gives him a direct command. I want you to take 3 days to call the men of Judah for me and be present here for yourself. You got 3 days. Verse 5. Amasa went to call the men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the set time which he had appointed him. David's a strategist. He knows that as the people of Israel are going back to their tents and to their homes, that we need to get this thing done quick. We need to have element of surprise. We need to have all our men banded together. And 3 days is the time frame. And Mesa doesn't do it. He delayed longer. There's a lesson there, but we got to move on. Verse 6. And David said to Abishai. Now, again, where's Joab? Well, Abishai is Joab's brother. Abishai and Joab are the nephews of David. They are also cousins to Amasa, which is interesting, which is why I think Absalom put Amasa in charge. But however, David said to Abishai, now Abishai may seem like a random name if you're first hearing him. He showed up in the last couple chapters where, particularly with Shimei, he was the guy throwing stones at David, and Abishai's like, who is this dead dog to do? And then he shows up again when Shimei comes in repentance. And we see Abishai, verse 21 of chapter 19, should not Shimei be put to death for this? We've seen Abishai all the way back in 1 Samuel. This is a guy who's been with David, who is just as guilty in some real way of murdering Abner as Joab was, because they're brothers. And they killed Abner, who killed their other brother. Anyways, I know the names can get confusing. David said to Abishai, "Now Sheba, the son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom." I'm noticing I'm trying to go quick, and I shouldn't, because we'll skip over context. So I'll try to we'll just see as far as we go. David says to Abishai, "Now this guy Sheba will do us more harm than Absalom." What does that imply? Well, it implies that Absalom did a lot of harm, but that Sheba and this rebellion that's taking place against the true king could be far worse. We need to get ahead of this. So he says to Abishai, "Take your Lord's servants and pursue him, so that he does not find for himself fortified cities and escape from our sight." In other words, before they get in their own little foxholes where they can't get away, let's go ahead and get them. Verse 7. So Joab's men went after him. Notice Joab's men. Now Joab would be there too, but notice his men went out with him. Along with who? Well, who's been with David all this time? It's not been the Israelites. It hasn't been the Judahites, but now the Judahites are with him. But the Sherethites and the Pelethites and all the 600 mighty men. And they went out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. All right. Verse 8. This will transition into our second point of the murder. When they were at the large stone which is in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet him there. Now, again, Joab's men had already been sent, all the mighty men shared by Sir. Now, Amasa had missed the 3-day window, but apparently he still wanted to go and help the cause. He's a little late, but he wanted to help the cause. And so Amasa came to meet him. Now, Joab was dressed in his military attire. And over that military attire was a belt with a sword in its sheath, fastened at his waist. And as he, that is Joab, went forward, it fell out. Now, the linguistic here just says it fell from its sheath. Joab said to Amasa, "Is it well with you, my brother?" And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. Now, again, let's just move on, verse 10. But Amasa was not on guard against the sword which was in Joab's hand. So he struck him in the belly with it, and poured out his inward parts to the ground, and did not strike him again, and he dies. What in the world happened? So Joab and his men are going to fulfill the purpose for which they've been sent out, to go get Sheba. That's the whole goal. Get Sheba. He's the one who led the rebellion. Amasa comes, and Joab says, "Is everything well with you?" as he motions forward, as the knife falls, and apparently he slyly picks it up, or it falls into his hand or something, and heals. And Amasa, unawares, is seeing Joab come forward to grab his beard to kiss him. I did some studies into this. It's actually fairly fascinating. The right hand versus the left hand, there's a debate between it. And the cultural significance there. Where did he kiss him? But the point is, Amasa is completely unawares of this, and he dies. Now, the question I think on everybody's mind is, why did he die? Joab, I think, had two primary reasons. The first reason is obvious, and that is the fact that Amasa stole a spot. That was his spot. It's been his spot forever. Commander of the army stole his spot. Number two, which might actually be legitimate, is, well, weren't you the head of Absalom's army? And now you're here. Do you have another plan or scheme to kind of overthrow this? Today, yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that and from what I gathered, that's my interpretation of how it went down. There are other interpretations. Gosh, there's quite a few. At least four that I saw. That's the one that I particularly hold because I love trying to expand the narratives here, see exactly how it went down. I think that's true. Hmm. Hmm. Doesn't mention them there. I think that I think so. So my understanding is that he did, and I'll share why in a moment. Was that a Mesa? Yes, yes. I think that he did. Let's keep reading and see if we can find it. I might be wrong, but we'll see nonetheless. Let's see. Amasa wasn't on guard against the sword that was in Joab's hand, so Joab struck him in the belly with it and poured out his inward parts on the ground. Did not strike him again, and he died. Then Joab and Abishai his brother pursued Sheba the son of Bichri. Now there stood by him one of Joab's young men. So this wouldn't be from the Judahites if there were any. It would be of Joab's men, of the men that David sent out secondarily. He stood around and he said, "Whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab." So it basically tells everybody who's there, you're for Joab and you're for David, let's follow him. But Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the highway. This sounds like a story, like, well, it is a story. It's a narrative, but something that actually happened. It sounds like something we'd see in the movies. This guy's just laying in the middle of the road, and everybody's just like, "What do we do? What do we do?" And this guy from Joab's camp says, "You follow Joab, you follow David, or yeah, and you follow David. We'll follow Joab, and we'll continue along." But what happens? You have Amasa. He's laying in his blood in the middle of the highway. When the man saw that all the people stood still, he removed Amasa from the highway into the field and threw a garment over him when he saw that everyone who came by him stood still. Or in other words, he saw everybody was like just motionless. And he takes the body, he drags it off the highway, lays a garment over him, comes back, and now what happens? As soon as he was removed from the highway, all the men passed on after Joab to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. Now, my understanding was that Amasa might have drawn some men. The text doesn't say that, so I can't really validate the claim. So it might be that just Amasa came. My understanding from all the men could be that, but of course, with Amasa's men not mentioned, could be more favorable just be Amasa. But I'll have to look a little further into that. So I appreciate you drawing that out. Oh yeah, sir. That could be a cause for that as well. Exactly. We see one of the references pulled me back to when Saul didn't wait 7 days. It was after 7 days for Samuel to arrive. He went ahead and went on with the battle, and there were severe consequences for that. Not following a timeline. You have 3 days because you didn't do it, because you didn't obey orders, because you were lackadaisical, or we assume possibly he was lackadaisical in his efforts to do so. He was judged because of it, in a very literal way.
Right, if you're David, doing something else, the wrong side.
Exactly. Now, was Joab wrong in what he did? Let's answer that question. I get a firm head nod. That's exactly right. First Kings chapter 2, we see that Joab was to be put to death for the death of Abner and for the death of. All right, so we continue with the few minutes we have. Now he went through all the tribes to Israel, or of Israel unto Abel, even Beth Makkah, and to all the Berites. And they were gathered together and also went after him. They all gathered together, and they also went after him. They came and besieged him in Abel Beth Makkah, and they cast up a siege ramp against the city, and it stood up by the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab were wreaking destruction in order to topple the wall. Now, one of the places that stood out to me when I went to Israel was Masada. It's a Herodian construction. It's supposed to be impenetrable. You have the Jewish-Roman War, and in 73 AD, you have the remaining Jews that fled to this impenetrable city on a hill by the side of the Sea of the Dead Sea. You have the snake path to get up to it, but I mean, they could just send archers. You just couldn't crack the code. Well, there was this siege ramp that the Romans made, and parts of it, of course, you can still see leftovers of the ramp today. They built that ramp all the way up after a long period of time, stretch of time, and with a battering ram, they eventually got into the city. But they get into the city, and the story ended with the Jews killed themselves before the Romans could do it, and they felt themselves more noble and honorable for doing so. But I get that image of a siege ramp, and sometimes with the pyramids, you get the story of them building a ramp, a huge. I don't know if that's true. Nonetheless, you have them building a siege ramp, going up into the city. We're going to capture the city. We're going to take it over. But something happens, and there's an intervention here. They build this siege ramp. It stood up by the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab, they were wreaking destruction to topple the wall, everything we can do to get in there. When a wise woman called from the city, "Here, here, please tell Joab, come here that I may speak with you." He approached her. The woman said, "Are you Joab?" He said, "I am." She said, "Listen to the words of your maidservant." He said, "I'm listening." She spoke, saying, "Formerly they used to say they will surely ask advice at Abel, and thus they ended the dispute. I am of those who are peaceable and faithful in Israel. You are seeking to destroy a city, even a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord?" Joab replied, "Far be it. Far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy." By the way, that's exactly what he was doing. "Such is not the case. But a man from the hill country of Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Bichri by name, has lifted up his hand against King David. Only hand him over, and I will depart from the city." And the woman said to Joab, "Behold, his head will be thrown down to you over the wall." Then the woman wisely came to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, threw it to Joab. So he blew the trumpet, and they were dispersed from the city, each to his tent. Joab also returned to the king at Jerusalem. We'll go ahead and finish the chapter. We're out of time. Now Joab was over the whole army of Israel. Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Sherethites and the Pelethites. And Adoram was over the forced labor. Jehoshaphat, the son of Elihud, was the recorder. And Sheva was the scribe. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. And Ira the Jerite was a priest to David. What in the world do we make of this? We know the story. They go to the city. They're about to barge in. And a woman cries down, "What in the world are you doing?" In fact, in previous times, people listened to us. And our advice was considered good. And I'm elaborating here. And outcomes were dismissed. And so why is it that you barged in? And Joab says, I really just want this one guy. And she says, "Okay, if that's all you want, we'll literally give you his head on a platter." And that's exactly what happened. The head fell down, and that was satisfactory for Joab. You notice at the end of the chapter, they killed him. As far as I'm aware, they killed him and sent the heads just just wallowing down, and that was enough. Which, to pierce the story a little further, why would they do that? Well, they believed that their life was more valuable than to hold to the wills of a headstrong traitor. There's a lesson there as well. What we see at the end is that Joab is now deemed to be head over David's army. We'll have to ask that question next week. Well, the following week, we have a special guest next week speaking. I'm excited about. Why Joab is allowed to be the commander of the army. If David knows what he's done, why him? I have to answer that question as well. We also see some very interesting names here. A different recorder. We see just some very interesting names. Zadok and Abiathar are still priests, which is very intriguing and interesting for how the remainder of this story sets up. What are the lessons we draw from it? We have to conclude there. What do we learn from this text? What's the whole point? David's been going through a whole battle of trying to get back to the city, and in verse 2, he finally does. Judah, all the people of Judah, they lead him into the city. He takes care of his 10 concubines. And behind the scenes, you've got another revolt, another rebellion. And I think the dominant lesson here is, as we entitled the lesson earlier, the consequence of rebellion. The consequence of what happens. This is a narrative of what happens to the one who rebels against God. He dies. We see that time and time again throughout the Judges, and we saw it with Absalom, and now we see it with Sheba. And what did he say? Oh, we have no portion in David, nor do we have an inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, and you go off in your life. Everything's fine and dandy until your life is required of you. And there is punishment in store for the one who rebels against God. There's, of course, a lesson in loyalty. That word is particularly used, if I can find it here. I guess it was an ESV. See if your translation. I know you have ESV. Bobby, see if verse 2 says loyalty. Oh, you have New King James? All right, I got it. Switching up on us, I see. Not too loyal. I'm joking. So all the men of Israel withdrew from following David and followed him, but the men of Judah remained steadfast, remained loyal to the king. Loyalty to the king, even when you have an opposing force that is massive and a rebellion that's massive. Also, we shouldn't be quick to just join up new things that arise and that are popular, that are cool and fun. Dennis, yes? Oh, clave to? Yeah, clung to. There we go. What's that? What'd you say? Old English word. I like clave. Clave unto. All right, I like that too. Loyal unto the king. David's men were a bunch of foreigners, but they were loyal. And in the Lord's church, we have people built up of all different races and kinds and people, human race. But Ephesians 4, I guess we will end there. Ephesians 4, I want us to see the kind of unity that we have in Christ. Verse 1, therefore I, Paul says, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Endeavoring is you got New King James? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Endeavoring.
That means putting a lot.
Certainly. You have a place of peace in the church, which can seem controversial, at least in Christendom, as we call it. But we see a lot of chaos even back here. He's our king. He's not our king. Well, we want to have him for our benefit. Well, no, he's of our bloodline. And here you have David in the background. And what I want us to see from this lesson, what I hope for us to see towards the end, is the world carries on. There's denominations here, and then there's people amidst the Lord's church. And there God is. And by our casting stones, of course, doctrinally we have to remain firm, but may we strive to establish peace amongst God's people as He's done for us. God being up there, let us not abuse Him with our words or with our actions, with the way we treat others, with differences of opinion in the church. But certainly may we come together and recognize that we have a King who needs to be established, who needs to be praised, who needs to be honored, who needs to be shared amongst the people. We shouldn't go form our own God. We shouldn't say, well, I'm just going to go to my tent and do whatever I want to, or say I have no real allegiance to Him, or whenever we feel like, God is nothing or worthless to us, like maybe one of these 10 concubines did. Don't forsake your faith, but recognize that the Lord is good. David gets back on his throne, and the stone, whatever, it is a stone. But and he does what's right concerning his concubines, and then the narrative shifts, and you have this murder between Joab and Amasa. And of course, the obvious thing is, why did you do this? And Amasa, why didn't you do this? There are small lessons there, but the dominant lesson is you have David coming back to be king, and God is blessing him throughout, although the controversy is crazy. And here we are as Christians walking through a crazy, wicked world, and we need to make sure that we're aligned with our God, that we make sure that we aren't quick to, even in our ability, like Shimei in chapter 19. Shimei comes and said, I'm sorry for what I've done. And Abishai says, you have every right to kill him. David, in his compassion, says, I won't do it. Let's establish peace. And we see God's blessing. I'm trying to throw in all these different lessons, but we see God's patience. We see God's will working throughout the situation. We see the loyalty of those who are true to the king, will do anything for him. And we see Joab, and I have so much more on Joab, but we'll have to sidebar it for next lesson.
Many people in the world today, because Christ has so many titles, they choose a title that gives them the most freedom to choose what they're going to do, there, be. And the highest title is God is King and Sovereign of all creation. I mean, so when he says something, it isn't frivolous. It's serious.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that was a really interesting point, too, as we close. That you see all of Israel saying, we're going to follow you, David, when it benefits us, but when it doesn't, we're going on our way. Let us not be that way either. With our Christian walk, we got these benefits, but when the world benefits us better, when we think temptation and a life of sin is better, may we not wallow
when it doesn't please us.
Stay loyal to the king. Help him with his purpose. They moved him from the Jordan to Jerusalem. May we carry about the Lord's will in our life as He is our King. May we stay close to Him, cleave to Him, and never forsake Him or go far away. He's our leader. We got to follow. We got to be amongst His people. We mentioned Sunday. So we got to conclude. We're way over. Thank you guys for your time. If there be any who need to come forward for repentance or for prayer, may you come. We led in our last song.
Losing and leaving, far beyond the monsters, far nest, and far beyond the taking, and I'm receiving as a summer wind of this. When beyond the when there's no knowledge, some is alive. Oh, happy summer when I've been beyond the light and waiting, sinking inside, far beyond the shore, darling in this. And far beyond the pain and sickness and dying, summer, summer when I've been. And far beyond Now so high. Oh, happy summer when I
Thanks, Bobby. Any closing announcements or updates that we need to be aware of? Yes. Oh, good. Okay. Okay. That's great. Okay. Man, that's good. That's great. I'm so happy to do that. I know y'all are too. What other updates might we have? Okay. All right. We'll keep Miss Cheryl in prayer. Sure. I'm glad she's home. Long little process, I imagine, but that's a good step. I'm happy to hear that. Oh yes, Brooklyn. Amanda's daughter. Um, yeah, the youngest one. Yeah, their names. Let's keep her in prayer too. All right. Surgery will be in a couple weeks from today. I forgot your reasoning why. Or no, for why they canceled. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. A couple viruses. So keep her in mind too. Right. Any others or any other events we need to make sure of? Yeah, card night next week. We're excited to hear Sebastian speak for us, and thrilled to hear you. We'll make sure that we're here. All right, if that be all, David.
Pray with me. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. Learn more about you, Lord. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for brought to us tonight. Help us to give us insight into your word, or help us first strength. Share your word every other false dark. We ask you to all these prayer requests, prayers, help with the prayers for all that you do, all that you've done for us. Lord, us. Cross.
See this on the here.